Okay, so, you guys have sent us a bunch of really interesting stuff about good manufacturing practices.
GMP.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And, at first glance, that might sound a little bit technical, but it's
Look,
really, like the foundation for making sure that all the things that we use every day, from, our medicines to our, everyday lotions and even our food,
yeah,
is safe and consistent.
exactly.
And this is, particularly important in the pharmaceutical industry. So
Mhm.
that's going to be a big focus of our discussion today.
Right. Think of it as like the essential blueprint for how things are made.
Yeah.
And our mission in this deep dive is to really like extract the most crucial aspects of GMP from everything you've all sent us
Right.
so that you can really clearly understand why it matters
Right.
and what are the key elements that manufacturers need to keep in mind.
Yeah, we're talking about everything from, making sure that the environment where these products are made is as clean as it can be, to making sure that everyone involved is super well trained
Uh-huh.
and that every single step of the process is documented with just meticulous detail.
Absolutely.
So it's a really comprehensive system.
Yeah,
And what's so interesting is that GMP is much more than just a checklist for regulatory compliance.
it is. Yeah.
We're going to explore what can happen when these practices aren't followed.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll look at some of the recent shifts in the regulatory landscape as well.
Okay. Sounds good.
So let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly are good manufacturing practices?
Well, so at its core, GMP represents a comprehensive system of guidelines and regulations that dictate precisely how products must be manufactured, controlled, and tested
Ah,
to guarantee both their quality and their safety.
okay.
Essentially, GMP lays down the absolute minimum standards for the facilities where these products are made,
Okay.
the equipment that's used in their production, and the processes that are diligently followed. And as you mentioned here in the U.S., the primary regulatory agency overseeing all of this is the Food and Drug Administration,
The FDA.
the FDA. That's
Yeah,
right. They operate using GMP, often referred to as CGMP,
okay.
where that C stands for current.
Current. Okay.
Now, the current aspect here is crucial because it means that GMP isn't a static set of rules,
Right.
but rather it requires companies to stay updated with the latest scientific knowledge and manufacturing technologies and to constantly be improving their processes.
So it's not just like written down somewhere and then they're done.
Exactly.
Mm.
CGMP regulations mandate that companies not only establish well-defined and robust procedures,
Okay.
but critically, that they consistently adhere to them in their daily operations.
Okay.
It's not enough to simply document the process. You have to follow it meticulously every single time.
I see.
And the fundamental principle that underpins all of this is prevention. GMP is fundamentally about proactively stopping mistakes from happening in the first place,
Okay.
preventing any form of contamination, and ensuring that quality is inherently built into the product right from the initial stages,
Right.
rather than just trying to test for it at the end.
So you're building it in
You're building it in.
rather than just testing it at the end.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Right.
So what specific areas does GMP actually cover?
Well, GMP encompasses a wide range of critical areas.
Okay.
Think about something as fundamental as hygiene,
Right.
maintaining scrupulously clean environments to prevent any kind of contamination.
Yeah, of course.
Then you have standard operating procedures, or SOPs.
Okay.
Think of them as detailed instruction manuals
Yeah.
for
Right.
every single step in the manufacturing process,
Right.
ensuring that everyone does things the same way every time.
Got it.
Critically, GMP also includes ensuring that all employees are thoroughly trained
Right.
and competent to perform their roles effectively and safely.
Okay.
And finally, meticulous documentation is absolutely paramount.
Okay.
Every single batch of product that's manufactured needs to have a complete and accurate paper trail detailing its entire manufacturing history,
I see.
from the raw materials used right through to the final release.
Right.
The overarching goal of all these elements is simple, yet incredibly vital:
Okay.
to ensure that every single product that ultimately reaches the consumer
Yeah.
is of the highest possible quality
Right.
and is completely safe for them to use.
Right.
It's about embedding that assurance throughout the entire manufacturing life cycle.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned GLP and GCP earlier too.
I did.
Can you just give us a super quick explanation of those?
Certainly.
Okay.
So good laboratory practice, or GLP, specifically focuses on the preclinical research phase.
Okay.
That's the testing that takes place before a product is ever used in humans.
I see.
GLP establishes standards for how these initial safety studies are planned, performed, monitored, reported, and archived,
Okay,
ensuring the reliability and integrity of the data.
got it.
Then you have good clinical practice, or GCP, which governs the clinical trial phase, the research that involves human volunteers.
Right.
GCP sets ethical and scientific quality standards for designing, conducting, recording, and reporting these clinical trials,
Okay.
ensuring the safety and rights of participants are protected
Right.
and the data generated is credible.
Okay, so GMP focuses on the manufacturing.
Manufacturing,
A GLP focuses on
preclinical studies.
preclinical studies, and GCP focuses on the clinical trials.
Exactly. All three are essential components
Right.
of a broader commitment to quality and safety
Yeah.
throughout the entire life cycle of regulated product.
Okay, so GMP is this really foundational system for how things are made.
It is.
But why is it so important to actually comply with these practices?
Right.
I mean, beyond just keeping the regulatory agencies happy.
You've hit on a crucial point,
Yeah.
while of course avoiding regulatory action is a significant motivator for companies.
Right.
The fundamental reason why GMP compliance is so vital
Yeah.
comes down to protecting people. When these standards are ignored or not properly implemented and followed,
Right.
the potential consequences could be really far-reaching and truly serious.
Okay.
We're not just talking about the inconvenience of a failed inspection.
Right.
We're talking about the very real potential for unsafe or ineffective products to reach consumers,
Yeah.
which can in turn lead to significant harm to their health.
Yeah. That's scary.
It is.
It's a big responsibility.
It is. And from a legal perspective, the consequences of GMP violations can be very significant.
Right.
If a product, whether it's a food item or a pharmaceutical drug, is manufactured in a facility that isn't operating in adherence to GMP,
Okay.
it can be legally classified as adulterated.
Adulterated. Okay.
Now, what's particularly interesting here is that this legal designation can apply even if the actual formulation of the product is perfect
Okay.
and it passes all of the end product quality control tests.
So it doesn't matter if the end product is fine.
Exactly. The mere fact that it was produced under substandard conditions,
Yep.
not meeting GMP requirements, renders it unlawful.
Wow.
It really underscores that the quality of the manufacturing process
Right.
is just as critically important as the quality of the final product itself.
So it's not just what it is when it's done.
Right.
It's how it was made all along the way.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And regulatory bodies like the FDA have the authority to impose some very serious penalties
Right.
when they find significant GMP violations.
Okay.
These can range from issuing formal warning letters, which put companies on official notice of non-compliance,
Okay.
to mandating product recalls,
Right.
which, as you can imagine, can be incredibly expensive and severely damaging to a company's reputation. And bottom line,
Of course.
they also have the power to levy substantial financial fines.
Right.
And in the most serious cases, even to shut down manufacturing facilities altogether.
Wow.
Just imagine the widespread disruption
Right.
and the profound loss of public trust
Yeah.
associated with having to recall an entire batch of a critical medication.
Yeah. The stakes are really high.
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
And it's perhaps more prevalent than many people realize.
Okay.
According to the data you shared in 2024, a staggering 58% of all the FDA's warning letters issued to U.S. drug manufacturers
Wow.
were due to issues related to GMP compliance.
That's a huge number.
It is more than half.
More than half.
It really highlights just how critical and potentially challenging it can be for companies to consistently maintain that necessary level of vigilance
Right.
in their manufacturing processes.
Uh-huh.
These kinds of GMP failures have a dual impact.
Okay.
First and foremost, they endanger public health,
Right.
which is the primary concern for regulators.
Of course.
But they also severely damage a company's brand reputation and their long-term financial stability.
Right.
Conversely, when companies prioritize and maintain strong GMP compliance,
Yeah.
there are significant positive outcomes.
Okay.
It leads to the consistent production of higher quality products,
Okay.
protects and strengthens the company's brand image, and fosters increased trust with both their customers and the regulatory agencies that oversee them.
So it's a win-win when it's done right.
It is absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, the landscape of regulations is always changing.
It is.
What are some of the recent GMP updates that we've seen in the U.S. that we should know about?
That's absolutely right. Regulatory bodies like the FDA are continuously working to refine and strengthen GMP standards
Right.
to ensure they keep pace with scientific advancements and emerging risks.
Makes sense.
The U.S. has seen several notable updates in recent times.
Okay.
One key area of focus has been on nitrosamine impurities.
Okay.
The FDA issued updated guidance on this in 2024.
Uh-huh.
This guidance introduces more stringent limits for the levels of nitrosamine impurities
Okay.
that are acceptable in human drugs.
I see.
And it outlines new, more sensitive testing methods that manufacturers need to employ.
Got it.
What's particularly significant about this is the proactive approach it represents. It's about ensuring that pharmaceutical manufacturers are actively and continuously assessing and controlling these potential contaminants
Right.
right throughout their manufacturing processes, with the ultimate goal of enhancing overall drug safety.
Yeah, so it's a response to some of these concerns we've been seeing in recent years.
Precisely, these impurities are a concern because some of them have been identified as potential carcinogens.
Right.
So this updated guidance is a critical step in protecting public health.
Makes sense.
Another important update involves the sterilization of medical devices using ethylene oxide.
Okay.
Ethylene oxide is a really critical method for sterilizing certain types of medical devices, particularly Class 3 devices,
Right.
which, just to clarify, are the highest risk category of medical devices.
Yeah. Okay.
The FDA has issued a transitional enforcement policy here.
Okay.
This policy provides new guidelines to help manufacturers who rely on ethylene oxide sterilization
Uh-huh.
to transition towards potentially safer sterilization alternatives,
Yeah.
while also working to maintain the stability of the medical device supply chain.
Right, because you can't just cut off the existing supply.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act between enhancing patient safety
Right.
by encouraging the adoption of newer technologies
Huh.
and ensuring that essential medical devices remain available
Right.
to those who need them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then there's the FDA's Quality Management Maturity Program, or
Well,
QMM program.
the QMM program.
Yeah, this is actually an expansion of an existing initiative,
Okay.
and it's specifically designed to encourage drug manufacturers to go above and beyond
Okay.
the basic CGMP requirements.
I see.
It's a voluntary program,
Okay.
but it offers a potentially significant reward for those who participate
Right.
and demonstrate a high level of quality maturity.
Got it.
Companies that can demonstrate proactive and mature quality practices
Okay.
may be subject to fewer routine regulatory inspections.
So have early adopters seen a reduction in inspections?
Well, while specific metrics might vary, the FDA's intent is clear. Okay, it's to reward a demonstrable commitment to quality beyond mere compliance.
I see. So it's like showing that they're really invested.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've also seen an increased emphasis on enhanced oversight of the supply chain,
Okay.
given the growing global complexities of pharmaceutical manufacturing
Right.
and the potential for drug shortages. The FDA is implementing stronger measures
Okay.
to ensure GMP compliance throughout the entire pharmaceutical supply chain,
Okay.
from the initial sourcing of raw materials and active pharmaceutical ingredients
Right.
all the way through to the final manufacturing and packaging of the finished product.
Okay.
The overarching aim is to prevent disruptions
Right.
in the supply of essential medicines
Makes sense.
and to ensure that quality is consistently maintained at every single stage
Yeah.
of the often intricate process.
Right. Okay. So all of these recent updates really underscore the FDA's ongoing commitment
We do.
to modernizing these GMP standards
Uh-huh.
and ultimately enhancing the safety, efficacy, and reliability of all these pharmaceutical and medical products that we rely on.
We do.
Okay, so GMP principles really go beyond just pharmaceuticals.
They do.
We've talked a lot about that industry,
Uh-huh.
but how does GMP typically manifest itself in other sectors?
Okay.
Like medical devices, for example.
Well, in the pharmaceutical world, as we've discussed,
Yeah.
GMP compliance isn't just important.
Right.
It's an absolute prerequisite.
Okay.
Regulators simply will not grant approval for a new drug or biologic
Right.
unless the manufacturing facility can provide robust and compelling evidence
Uh-huh.
that their entire production process rigorously adheres to established GMP standards.
Ice?
And as we touched on earlier, maintaining GMP is not a one-time event,
Right.
but rather a continuous and ongoing commitment
Yeah.
throughout the entire life cycle of a drug,
Right.
from the initial sourcing of raw materials and active ingredients,
Okay.
right through to the final packaging and distribution of the finished product. It's often considered the single most critical area of focus and investment for pharmaceutical manufacturers.
Okay.
And the consistently high percentage of FDA enforcement actions related to GMP in this sector really reinforces just how paramount it is
Uh-huh.
for anyone working in the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
A robust and well-implemented GMP program translates directly into fewer errors in production,
Okay.
smoother and more predictable regulatory inspections,
Right.
and, most importantly, safer and more reliable outcomes
Yeah.
for the patients who depend on their medications.
So it's like really baked into how that industry works.
It is.
Okay, what about medical device manufacturers?
Okay.
Do they operate under similar principles?
Yes, they do. Medical device manufacturers operate under a similar set of quality system regulations
Okay.
that are essentially GMP principles specifically tailored and adapted
Okay.
for the unique characteristics and risks associated with medical devices. For instance, here in the U.S., the FDA has its own comprehensive set of regulations specifically for medical devices,
Okay.
known as 21 CFR Part 820.
Okay.
Think of this as the FDA's specific instruction manual
Got it.
for ensuring quality in the design, manufacture, and control of medical devices.
Makes sense.
In addition to this, there's also the internationally recognized standard ISO 13485.
Okay.
Many medical device manufacturers choose to adhere to this global standard, not only to demonstrate their commitment to quality,
Right.
but also to facilitate access to international markets,
Yeah.
as it's widely recognized around the world.
Okay.
So while the specific details and requirements might differ somewhat from pharmaceutical GMP
Right.
to account for the distinct nature of medical devices,
Yeah.
the fundamental underlying principles
Right.
of ensuring consistent production and strict adherence to safety and efficacy requirements
Right.
are very much the same.
Got it. So looking beyond healthcare,
Oh.
do these GMP principles extend to like cosmetics and food production as well?
Yes, they absolutely do. Industries like cosmetics and food have also increasingly recognized the importance of
Okay.
and adopted GMP principles to ensure consumer safety and product quality.
Okay.
In the European Union, for example, GMP compliance has been a long-standing and mandatory requirement
Wow.
for all cosmetics companies operating within the EU.
Okay.
And here in the U.S., we've seen a significant and relatively recent development
Okay.
with the passage of the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act, or MASHA.
Masha. Okay.
Back in 2022,
Uh-huh.
this really landmark legislation finally made GMP practices mandatory
Okay.
for all cosmetics companies that manufacture or distribute their products in the United States.
Okay. So most of us probably don't think about, the way our shampoo or skin cream is made
That's right.
in the same way we think about, prescription drugs being made.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But now under the authority of MASHA,
Right.
even those everyday personal care products like your shampoo, your skin cream, your makeup, they are all subject to much stricter quality controls throughout their entire production process.
Wow.
The aim is to prevent potential issues
Okay.
like contamination with harmful microorganisms,
Right.
incorrect labeling of ingredients,
Yeah.
or other potential hazards that could affect consumer safety.
Right.
It's really about extending that same fundamental commitment to safety and quality
Yeah.
to a much wider range of consumer products
Yeah.
that we all use on a regular basis.
So ultimately it boils down to consistently doing things the right way
Exactly.
every time, no matter what you're making.
Ultimately, good manufacturing practices really boil down to a fundamental principle:
Okay.
consistently doing the right thing in the right way every single time,
Yeah.
regardless of the specific product that's being manufactured.
Okay.
By proactively building quality and meticulous attention to detail into each and every step of the production process,
Mm-hmm.
companies not only ensure that they're consistently meeting the necessary regulatory requirements, but even more importantly, they are fundamentally safeguarding the well-being of their customers
Okay.
and protecting the hard-earned reputation of their company.
Right.
It's crucial to remember that GMP compliance isn't a one-off task that you can just check off a list.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey of continuous improvement
Okay.
and adaptation to new knowledge and evolving technologies.
Yeah.
And for pharmaceutical professionals in particular,
Yeah.
staying at the forefront of GMP means a continuous commitment to lifelong learning
Right.
and adapting to the ever-evolving regulatory standards
Okay.
and the emergence of new and innovative manufacturing technologies.
Yeah.
It's undoubtedly a challenging and complex endeavor,
Uh-huh.
but it's one that yields truly significant and meaningful rewards
Right.
in terms of producing safer and more effective products
Right.
and fostering a stronger foundation of trust
Yeah.
with both the regulatory bodies that oversee the industry
Okay.
and the public who rely on these products every day.
So the real takeaway here is that knowledge and vigilance are crucial
They are.
when it comes to achieving and maintaining GMP compliance.
Precisely. It's about fostering a pervasive company-wide culture
Okay.
where quality isn't just the responsibility of a single department.
Right.
It's a deeply ingrained, shared responsibility
Okay.
that every single employee understands and actively embraces
Yeah.
in their daily work.
Right.
And for you, the listener, staying well informed about the latest best practices
Okay.
and any changes in regulatory guidance isn't just a matter of good practice.
Right.
It's what ultimately gives you and the organizations you might be involved with
Yeah.
that critical compliance edge in this ever-evolving landscape.
So as you're considering all of this, maybe think about this.
Okay.
With all these advancements we're seeing in manufacturing technologies,
Right.
automation and AI,
Uh-huh.
and the constantly evolving expectations of consumers
Right.
regarding product safety and overall quality,
Right.
what might the future of GMP actually look like?
How will these fundamental principles adapt and evolve to effectively meet the unique challenges and exciting opportunities of tomorrow's manufacturing landscape?
Interesting.
Just something to consider.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today into GMP.
It was
Thank you, viewers, for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your colleagues. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking that subscribe button below so you never miss out on valuable insights. I'm Brian Edmonds, signing off. See you in the next one.